A messenger bursts through the open gates of the castle, breathing heavily, driving his foam-flecked horse to the absolute limit. The news he brings makes hearts stop. The enemy army is vast, and in a matter of days, it will close its ring around these walls. From this moment, time shifts its course, and a relentless countdown begins. The garrison commander immediately barks orders, setting the gears of siege preparation into motion. Riders gallop through the surrounding villages, raising the alarm. Peasants frantically gather their belongings. They drag bundles of clothes, drive their cows, goats, and sheep, and use creaking carts to bring in every last grain they can scrape from their barns. Everything that cannot be taken behind the high stone walls must be destroyed immediately. It is a harsh but absolutely necessary scorched earth tactic. Houses are torched, sheds are torn down, and ancient trees and orchards around the castle are chopped to the roots. The enemy must find no cover from arrows, no timber for siege engines, and not a single stalk of wheat for sustenance. As the last peasant, clutching a child, runs into the courtyard, the heavy oak portcullis crashes down, and the drawbridge rises over the deep moat. The trap snaps shut. A day or two later, lookouts on the highest tower spot a dark line on the horizon. At first, it is just a thick cloud of dust, but soon, the tips of spears, the gleam of armor, and finally, banners fluttering in the wind emerge through it. Thousands of soldiers, slowly, like an inescapable tidal wave, flood the valley. They are in no rush. The enemy is confident. The attackers pitch countless tents, light hundreds of campfires whose smoke obscures the sky, and methodically begin to build their own palisade around the castle, a line of blockade, ensuring no one can enter or leave the doomed stronghold. Meanwhile, inside the castle, built to hold 100 or 2 in peacetime, 500 or even 1,000 people are now crammed together. Space is catastrophically scarce. People settle down for the night in damp corridors, in the stables, right on the straw next to the animals, huddling together on the cold stone floors of the great hall. The grim-faced commander takes stock of the provisions: barrels of grain, salted pork, wheels of hard cheese, dried fish, and ale. All of it is moved into the main keep, the citadel, and placed under the strictest guard. From this day on, every crust of bread and sip of water is strictly rationed, for no one knows how long this isolation will last. The besiegers are not sitting idle. They construct colossal siege towers on creaking wooden wheels, covering the fronts with raw ox hides to protect the wood from flaming arrows. Inside these behemoths, across several tiers, hide dozens of steel-clad warriors. The tower is slowly pushed toward the walls. From above, a hail of stones, boiling water, and scorching sand rains down upon the attackers, forcing them to retreat in panic. If the wooden drawbridge of the siege tower strikes the stone battlements with a heady thud, a fierce standoff begins. The battle is fought on a narrow strip, just a couple of meters wide. The defenders stand like a wall for their home, and every inch costs the attackers an incredible price.
When direct assaults fail, engineering and heavy artillery come into play. The attackers roll out giant trebuchets capable of hurling massive boulders, smashing through thick stone vaults and shattering the battlements. Simultaneously, sappers begin secretly digging tunnels beneath the fortress's foundations. The tunnel entrance is carefully hidden inside a distant tent. Dirt is hauled away under the cover of night, and the tunnel roofs are reinforced with thick wooden beams. When the tunnel reaches the base of the wall, the beams are heavily coated in animal fat and set ablaze. The fire destroys the supports, the earth caves in, and a massive section of the wall collapses with a deafening roar in a cloud of dust, opening a breach. To prevent this, the defenders place copper basins filled with water on the floor. If ripples appear on the surface, it means pickaxes are at work deep below. The besieged dig a countermine. And then men clash face to face in pitch darkness, engaging in a desperate, muffled struggle underground, trying to collapse the roof on their enemies and protect the foundation of their fortress. A siege is not only about iron and stone, it is a grueling psychological ordeal. The attackers often use catapults to launch hives or angry bees or pots of blazing pitch. Sometimes terrifying projectiles are used, sources of inevitable disease with which the enemy tries to spark an epidemic and force the garrison to lay down its arms without open combat. The psychological pressure is equal to the artillery fire. The besiegers visibly and ruthlessly execute prisoners in full view of the defenders, aiming to sow panic and despair. In response, the defenders stage theatrical displays on the walls, shouting insults and mocking the enemy, trying to infuriate them and provoke a reckless attack. There's also a famous ruse. When almost nothing is left inside, the defenders feed the last scraps of grain to a single surviving pig and throw it from the wall into the enemy camp. The sight of a well-fed animal is meant to convince the besiegers that the castle has so much food it can afford to throw it away, leaving them disheartened enough to lift the siege.
But in reality, a crushing atmosphere reigns inside the castle. The days drag on agonizingly slowly. Mornings begin with a short, solemn mass. People pray fervently, for no one is certain of tomorrow. Food rations dwindle at a terrifying pace. After a month, bread is replaced by watery broth, and after 2, by a pitiful handful of dry grain per person a day. The warriors on the walls receive slightly more, as they need strength to hold their weapons, while the women, the elderly, and the children slowly fade from exhaustion. Yet diseases become a worse enemy than starvation. The castle's toilets, narrow stone niches from which waste falls into the moat, were never meant for this many people and quickly overflow. The overcrowding, unsanitary conditions, and lack of clean water inevitably lead to outbreaks of infection, which cut people down faster than any arrows, sparing neither commoners nor noble lords. There is almost no one to treat the sick, and there are no medicines. Giving the fallen proper last rites becomes impossible. The enemy will not allow them to be carried outside the walls, and leaving them in the cellars near the food supplies is far too dangerous. Therefore, the departed are simply laid in rows in the open courtyards under the sky. When true terminal starvation sets in, the castle descends into the darkness of despair. First, all the horses are eaten. Then, anything alive that can be caught goes into the cooking pots. People resort to leather belts, saddles, and boot soles, boiling them for hours to get a murky sludge that offers at least the illusion of a meal. They chew dry grass and strip bark from wooden beams. It is at this breaking point that the commander makes the most bitter and difficult decision. To save the miserable remnants of food for the soldiers, he orders the useless mouths to be driven out the gates. Anyone who cannot hold a sword, women, the elderly, children. The gates open slightly. Hundreds of weeping people are pushed outside, and the saving portcullis drops behind them. But the enemy cruelly and pragmatically refuses to let them pass. These people find themselves caught in a freezing trap, in a narrow strip of no man's land between the walls of their home and the enemy's trenches. Day and night, the garrison watches from the walls as their loved ones suffer from piercing cold and hunger. It is a cynical and terrifying calculation. The sight of their family's torment breaks the defender's spirit more surely than any battering ram. For a common person caught in the epicenter of a siege, a happy ending was almost non-existent. If the castle surrendered to the victor's mercy by treaty, the peasants simply passed into the power of a new lord, but they had nowhere to return. Their fields were trampled, their livestock stolen, and their homes turned to ash. If the castle was taken by a decisive storm, there was no mercy. The soldiers, bursting over the walls, hardened by months of deprivation, acted swiftly and harshly. The complete ruin of the fortress and the seizure of all property were considered a grim but lawful reward for their grueling labor. The garrison might still retreat to the main keep and try to negotiate terms, but for the civilians, huddled in terror in the corners, the story ended right there, amidst the clash of steel and the crash of falling gates. But even in this endless darkness, amidst the ashes and shattered walls, there was always room for the incredible resilience of the human spirit. Ordinary people who had lost everything in an instant found the strength to live on. Survivors returned to their burned-out homes, plowed the trampled fields anew, and patiently, stone by stone, rebuilt their lives. A brutal siege could crush granite and pierce iron, but it could not ultimately destroy the will to create. For wherever the clash of weapons faded, a new sprout of life inevitably pushed its way through the ruins, proving that humanity can withstand and outlast even the darkest of nights.